Jeff Durkin with We Are Change Connecticut out here in Washington, D.C. As you can see, the White House in the backdrop behind us. And we're here with John Zangas of D.C. Media Group, who does amazing work covering events in the D.C. area, along with a few other people involved. John, thanks for the interview, and tell us about the latest stuff you've been covering since last met in December. Some of the latest stuff you've been covering and been doing.
Yes, well, actually, D.C. Media Group is a collective of about 10 people. So I'm just one of a group of actually wonderful people who are totally committed and dedicated to reporting news that the mainstream media is not covering or giving, at best, scant covering and reviews to. Some of the stories that we have been reporting on our website involve environmental issues, social justice issues, the protests in Brazil, and the war in Iraq. Now, I guess the most prominent of those social justice issues right now is the Cecily McMillan trial and sentencing. We've spoken to Cecily at Rikers, and we'll be doing a story on that. Her story is very compelling, an incredibly powerful woman with some incredible ideas about how the movement can take a better form if people look at the issues and not try to dictate to issues, but find out from the folks that are suffering what they need and how we can support them. So Cecily is going to be, we're going to be writing a story on her. Another issue that we've been covering is the fracking and the liquid natural gas at Cove Point. Cove Point is comparable in a lot of ways to the KXL pipeline because it is a singular, an entity of a large infrastructure of liquid natural gas extraction from the Earth's crust. In the east, it's the Marcellus coal shelf. And what they're doing is they're fracking Pennsylvania, New York, West Virginia. They're sinking these wells deep into the ground, probably 8,000 feet, 5,000, 8,000 feet. If you get a chance to watch the movie Gasland, it explains completely what fracking is and how deleterious this is to the environment, not just the ground, but the water, the air, and the land. And so we've been reporting on Cove Point because we feel that Cove Point, which is on the Chesapeake, is going to be converted into, by Dominion Energy, is going to be converted into an export facility for liquid natural gas. There are lots of issues that Cove Point bring up that are impacting everybody. One is that, first of all, the site, that where it's being built right adjacent to a city called Lusby. And Lusby, there are about 4,000 people in the immediate vicinity of Cove Point liquid natural gas facility. Now, the federal, I think it's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has been overseeing these projects. But what they really are is a rubber stamp for giving permits to the gas companies and the energy companies to frack, to pipe, to build compressors, and to link all of that infrastructure to the liquid natural gas facility at Cove Point. So what we've been doing is reporting about FERC and the residents of Lusby in Maryland and how that's going to impact the entire infrastructure of the East Coast as far as energy extraction goes. There's a lot to that, but we probably put up about 5 articles and done video on that as well. Let's see, there is also our man Rob Brune, who's very active. He's an incredible independent media journalist and videographer. He's been up in Baltimore recently reporting on the Tyrone West killing by the police. So we know that there's a real serious issue in our country right now with how police are going in and how there are lots of killings and murders really at the hands of police. SWAT teams go in, they throw flashbangs, a child gets killed or hurt or maimed, people get shot during drug stops. There was an incident in Albuquerque that was really highly prominent in the news. A homeless man was basically executed by police. And that needs to stop. And so we're reporting on issues like that as well. The Iraq War, we just spoke to some friends of ours or some protesters behind us at the White House. In fact, they're still standing there right now. about the Iraq War and our involvement over there. We put up a couple of essays about the Iraq War, a few stories by Rob Brune and myself. So our effort is to continue reporting these stories that aren't being reported in a way, in the voices of the people, that aren't being reported by mainstream media.
And it shows the great work that you guys are doing here in D.C. and also in other places, anybody else watching out there. Where do you see the trend going with journalism in a way? Because we have a different perspective on that from looking as journalists at these different stories. Where do you see it heading, and if at all, anything like more of an optimistic tone or more pessimistic?
Well, I like to think that the glass is half full. Even though we're focusing on issues that are very troublesome and disturbing, we need to focus on the things that we're doing right. And what we are doing, and what we're succeeding, we never thought this would happen, is that we're actually waking people up. There's a great news aggregator run by Kevin Zeese and Margaret Flowers called Popular Resistance. And this news site takes really good stories from all around the country and puts them up. Truth Out also does that. There are many others that I can't begin to name. But there is a sign that things are starting to change. Just recently in Wisconsin, some folks from Jefferson County went to an Enbridge meeting with the corporation called Enbridge Energy. And these folks from Enbridge had gone in there to basically give people question and answer period one at a time. But the folks at this event just all went in group and took over the meeting and turned it into a hearing. And that was just the power of people. You know, the purpose of media is to educate and inform people on what's going on. But if you have a media that's owned by generally most of the media is owned by 6 corporations, that's going to taper down the message. And we've got to change that. We've got to get independent media out there. So the more independent media we can get reporting on this, the more of these good stories we can put out there. So I see that the trend is towards educating and informing people, and that can only bring about positive change.
I think it's important too, specifically with different stories, and recently you just spoke with some protesters who are outside the White House here right now about where the run-up to the war in Iraq is going again, and basically repeating from 2003. It's also encouraging to show that when we cover these stories also to kind of not let history keep repeating itself from these different stories, whether it's war or any other issues. Yeah, just your thoughts on that, if you...
Well, there was that brings up another issue, the intended war in Syria. You know, the administration was going to go into Syria and bomb and attack. And a large collective group of anti-war activists fought back against that. They called their Congress folks, and they stimulated the country into standing up against that war. And as a result, there was no war in Syria. There may have been some assistance provided to the Syrian government to to help out with that. But the fact is that no Americans went into bomb, no Americans went to attack. And let's face it, we've been involved in wars going since 1990, since all of the millennials who are living have been alive since they were born, have been in a war. And it's as if we've been habituated to live in a state of war, and that's not good. In our country's history, there are only 23 calendar wars that this country has not been in a war, and that needs to change. So the fact that the anti-war activist community stood up and prevented us from going into Syria is a good sign. Now, it looks like we're getting back into Iraq. That the story isn't finished on that, but we'll see.
Just wrapping up here, for people to check out your latest stuff, what latest stuff you guys have been doing, and to stay updated, to follow updates, emails, or anything else you like to add. And I definitely encourage people to check out your work and stuff. And anything else you'd like to add? Yeah,
our website is dcmediagroup.us. We're a collective of volunteers. We've trained ourselves as we've gone along. We share information. All of our information is free. We don't ask for donations, although we could use a little help here and there. And it's for the public. It's for you.
Remember out there, don't hate the media, become the media.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, John. I appreciate you for the interview.
I would say is to just hang in there, because journalism is changing, but it's changing for the better, and it's a revolutionary time for journalists, because you can just pick up a smartphone or a small camera and head out and change the world.
Change, because without grassroots media, without citizen journalism, we will not be able to take back the media. We have to make the corporate media irrelevant and take things in our own hands, and I applaud your guys' efforts, and I applaud everyone who's doing similar things, because this is really the revolution right here.